In this video, we're going to cover how to avoid rework in construction. Did you know that rework, the actual act of doing it again, can cost you anywhere from 2 to 12 times the original cost? That is horrific. I do not want that for you. That's why you're in this video. Stay with us. In this video, we're going to cover where rework comes from. I never knew this. This is super cool. And how to reduce it. The process that you can use on your project site to manage the actual quality installation of work. And a really cool guide for double checking. So you're going to love this content. Let's go. So first, what is rework? What do we mean by this word? Well, rework is the making of changes to the original version. Meaning that we either have rework because it's being changed or because we did not install it right originally. The typical causes at a high level are threefold. Number one, changes to the work itself, meaning from the original direction. Number two, errors, meaning that something was done wrong in the original version. And three, omissions, which means that something was omitted or left out of the installation, which means that now it needs to be reworked. So those are the three main causes, and it's nice to keep those in mind. And so I've got a lot of really good suggestions for you on how to avoid rework. And to cue that up, I'm going to remind you of the quality process that I highly recommend that we follow in construction so that we can anchor back to it. So here we go. All right, so number one, when we are starting a new scope, the first thing that we need to do is the buyout process. Once we have a contract and that milestone is hit, we need probably within about 2 weeks to have what's called the pre-mob meeting. And this meeting right here is before the trade partner mobilizes, and this will explain clearly the requirements for the trade when they show up to the actual project site. Now, if this is the install date for that trade partner, you, between the pre-mob and the actual installation, will have what's called a pre-construction meeting. And we have talked about this in other videos. In fact, I'll link you to these videos if it's helpful for you. But the bottom line is we ask for what we wanted here, and then we receive what we want in that pre-construction meeting. This happens 1 to 3 weeks before the work starts. That way, your foreman and your superintendents can come to the meeting having read the plans and specs and prepared. And if they didn't, you have a backup window to host that meeting. In that meeting, you will set forward the expectations for the first bit of work that you're going to do with your crew so that you can inspect it. This is called a first in place inspection. So I'll do FIPINSP, first in place inspection. Once this inspection happens, the crew is off to a good start, and before they actually finish, you will inspect along the way and then obviously close them out. So here's the key. When we're doing scopes, we need to plan the work, which is happening up here in this realm. We need to build it right. Okay, so build it right while we're there. Okay, with proper expectations. And then we need to finish as we go. So we are making sure that the trade is finishing and that they're closed out by the time they finish that scope. So again, the pre-mobilization meeting, pre-construction meeting, the first in place inspection, follow-up inspections, and final inspection. This is the process that every one of your trade partners will be a part of in order for you to set up this quality system and for the suggestions that I'm about to give you. So the reason that I drew this was so that I can explain and anchor the 9 major causes of rework and how this process will help. So let's start. Number one, human error. Human errors happen when you mix human beings and technical tasks, right? You can reduce human errors by having proper expectations, training the crew, right? Having something that they can compare their work to, and following up. So the human error aspect of the work is really reduced when we, after going through this process, are able to do a first in place inspection and see how the humans are actually doing the work. Then, if it's right, doing those follow-up inspections and those final inspections. This will help reduce the human error aspect. Number two, poor quality materials. Poor quality materials is when the materials are not acceptable, or we have the wrong type of material, or we have the wrong material specified for the work as a part of the design. The part of this process that will really help with that is not only the pre-construction meeting where we are reviewing it with the owners and the designers and the installation methods, but also when we come out here to our first in place inspection and we're actually able to see how those materials are showing up to the project with a material inspection, but also how they are being installed and interfacing as a part of your first mock-up. Number 3, inaccurate field information, meaning do workers have the right information to go do the installation? Well, this first in place inspection is huge for that because you'll be able to actually see what they're using from an installation standpoint. And I do want you to remember that when you host this pre-construction meeting, you'll read the plans and the specs, and you will develop a checklist or a visual checklist that the crew can use for the installation of their work, and you will verify that that is clearly articulated so that the crew can actually install it the right way. So having inaccurate field information is greatly reduced when we do the pre-con meeting right, develop the right deliverables, and host our first in place inspection and say, hey, what are you installing it to? What was the installation? Did they match? Do you have the right field information? Number 4, when you're out inspecting with the crew, you can make sure that the tools that the crew is using are adequate for the work being installed, because rework is sometimes caused by inadequate or outdated tools or damaged tools. So we want to reduce that by making sure that's a part of your inspection as the crew starts. Number 5, miscommunication. And again, miscommunication is greatly reduced when we actually check the work, the first part of the work in that first in place inspection, and when we verify in our ongoing inspections, right? And when we verify at the end in our final inspection. We want to make sure that the information is going from the super to the foreman to the workers as a cohesive group and being checked by somebody from the project management team. So if you have a new foreman or a new crew, again, you get to take them through that pre-construction meeting again, the first in place inspection, and to constantly monitor to support and enable them so that they don't have rework. Number 6, general mistakes that are made by the installers in the field. Now, this is very key. In the pre-construction meeting, if we really go through a deep dive and assessment of the work, we can pretty much identify at least 80% of the things that historically go wrong. So if the mistake has happened in the past, we can assume that it will happen again because we're anchoring to a representative example, okay? And so when we do that, we're able to, in this meeting, really assess, well, hey, how are we going to prevent that mistake from happening in the future? That goes on to our quality feature of work card or board, and then gets inspected in the first in place inspection. Number 7, rework can happen because of having different versions. So if there is a version of the design that was installed and there's actually a bulletin or an ASI or an addendum or something that changed the design and the crew maybe didn't know about it, you will pick that up in the first in place inspection and in the follow-up inspection to verify that they're working off of the right version of the information and that whatever they're installing is the most up-to-date according to the design. And number 8, and this is not insulting, tedious work completions. Rework can happen when crews really start to get into a consistent rhythm, and it's not laziness, but it's familiarity, meaning your brain starts to autopilot a lot of things, our attention starts to drift a little bit, and because it's repetitious, we can fall away from some of our original quality standards. And so what will really help with that is our follow-up inspections, our ongoing inspections, and then the final inspection to make sure that human beings doing repetitive tasks are staying with their quality installation. You know something else that's kind of repetitive? Every video that I do, I ask for likes, for comments, or for you to subscribe. And I know that can get repetitious. You're like, Jason, I've already heard this before, but what would your life be like if you were able to hear and implement all of these videos to support your career, please do that now. We'd love for you to like and subscribe. So let me conclude by giving you a couple of tips. These tips, in essence, that I'm going to share with you now will essentially help you to avoid rework. Number one, make sure that your crews have clear expectations. Number two, make sure those expectations are clearly communicated. Number three, make sure that those expectations are visually seen and used during the installation. Number four, inspect those expectations as you go. And number five, always have a second set of eyes to make sure that we don't have confirmation bias and that we're seeing real-time deviations when they happen. In that way, you'll be able to plan it first, build it right, and finish as you go. So if you really want to avoid rework on your project, make sure you're following a system. Make sure you're in the mental frame of plan it first, build it right, and finish as you go. And make sure that expectations are clear, that they're communicated, that they're followed, and that they are consistently followed with any crew that shows up on the project site. Now, as a free gift in the description below, I'm going to link you to some really cool content. Not only this process, but also the common reasons for rework and a bonus bit of content that will explain to you how you, if you're a part of this process, can do some double checks and look at the information or the installation in a way that will allow you to see deviations. I really hope that you're able to implement this because rework can cost you so much. On average, about 8 times the original cost. I don't want that for you. I hope you love this content and put it in practice tomorrow. On we go.